What up, coaches? I've got my tea. That's the most important part here. I got some tea with me. And Brian, I apologize if I say your last name wrong, because I always get mine mispronounced. Brian Tier, I think it is, asked a super great question. And I started to furiously type out answers and then take notes. And I was like, this is gonna be so much easier if I just hop on a video, drink a bunch of tea, and talk about it. It'll be more fun for me too, and hopefully you guys as well. So I'm going to read Brian's question here, which is, where do you find the balance between charging lower rates initially and getting more coaching practice to build confidence in your skills versus charging higher rates early on and getting a bunch of no's until you enroll someone at that rate, which then becomes your new normal? Let's start with a sip of tea. I want to be true to brand here. Apparently drinking copious amounts of tea is the brand I've created for myself. I'm all right with that because I love tea. So, such a good conversation, such a good question. And I think it's really great because I think all of us struggle, at least I know I struggle with this, not only when I first started coaching, but like every time I lean into a new edge, every time I raise my rates or step into what's next for me, I fall back into this place. So I want to be clear that I'm speaking as much for me as I am for anyone else out there. And hopefully some of that is helpful. So let's start. First, I just want to flag a small piece of language, Brian, which you wrote. Where do you find the balance between charging lower rates initially and getting more coaching practice to build confidence? So confidence in your skills. I think the first thing I want to say is that regardless of the rates you're charging, you can build confidence in your skills. And I like how you're wording it like, by practicing, I will build confidence, instead of like, how do I get the confidence first and then practice? So that's great. What up, Mark? I always read his name, Bear Tier. Yeah. Hey, Bear Tier. Maybe that's your new nickname, Brian, is your Bear Tier. So regardless of what you're charging, I see this a lot when we would train coaches. I would often hear from them, well, Adam, I don't want to start. I just want to work pro bono right now because I need to get a lot of practice first. I got to get practice under me. That's, what's the nice way I can put it? That's bullshit. It's not true that you have to charge a low rate or work for free to get practice for you, because there's a world of people out there that you can serve before you ever get to the point of proposing to them. So I want to kind of shake that out a little bit. There's no need for people to have hired you for you to get practice. You can coach someone powerfully over the course of 2 hours. Tell them this is what it costs to work with me. Are you interested? And if they say no, great. You still got to practice for 2 hours. And yeah, there's a little bit of nuance to working longer term with someone where you get to practice different aspects of what it is to support someone. But what I see more often than not is that people use needing to practice and work at a lower rate or pro bono as a way to just really to avoid doing the thing that's scary, which is often charging a strong fee, as Steve Chandler might call it. Okay, so first I want to speak, I'm going to say, like, when we would work with a new coach, the starting point we would give them, and this doesn't mean it's the right rate or the right place to start, but just it gives you a point of reference, was, as of today, start charging $500 a month for a minimum of 3 months. So if someone wants to work with you, it's a minimum $1,500 commitment, $500 each month. And this number we chose for a few reasons. The first is because, there's one more part to that package. It's $500 a month, 3 month minimum commitment, 1 hour every week. So 4 coaching conversations a week, blah, 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 blah. So there's a few reasons that we landed there. The first is that it's just good to have any kind of baseline, right? The beautiful thing about coaching is that there are no rules. We get to make this up. But just like learning how to be an artist or learning how to be a dancer, you need some guidelines within which to be creative. And so this gives you a bit of a rough guideline, a starting point. Second, what most of the people we were training would do is they would try to convert that number into a hourly rate, and then their head would explode because they'd be like, oh my God, $125 an hour. There's no way I can charge that much, which is nonsense. There's millions of coaches out there that are charging much more than that. And we really wanted to get people, we wanted to confront that fear, that hourly rate fear that would show up, and support them in moving past that. Because as a coach, you're really not working on an hourly rate. The money you charge is a function of your client's commitment and the vision that they are committed to creating in their lives. It has nothing to do with your hourly rate. So by charging that amount of money, by giving them that as the kind of the starting point, it forced the coach to confront it early on, rather than charge $10 an hour, $20 a session, $100 a session for some variable amount. That when you keep it loose like that, it allows the coach to kind of meander around and take a lot more time before they do the thing that's going to move their practice and their life forward, which is confront the fear right away. So that's one of the reasons. The second reason is that that rate, $500 a month, is enough that there's very few people that just have $500 a month to, I'm just pausing because I'm noticing, wow, there's a context I might have here, like very few people. That's not necessarily true. But for a lot of the people that you'll meet, $500 requires them to make a commitment. It's not free to just throw $500 a month at something. There's probably some of you that are watching that are like, actually, that's nothing to me. Great. That's not really going to be a commitment for you. But it requires that the coach stand for some degree of value. If you're charging that kind of rate, it confronts you a little bit. It forces you to be like, wow, I'm actually demanding, I'm standing for the fact that I'm worth this amount of money. And finally, it requires the client make a commitment in their own lives. When someone says they'll say yes to pro bono, like when a coach offers someone a free rate, and the client says yes, because why not, right? What do they have to lose? Not much, maybe 4 hours a month, which is nothing. I spend that in a day playing Assassin's Creed. So I can burn through 4 hours doing nothing at all, and I'm sure you can too. But most people will feel the sting of $500. So it demands a degree of commitment. And as a coach, that's part of what we want to stand for in our clients' lives is commitment. Commitment is what moves them forward. Commitment is what creates transformation. Not wanting it. Being committed versus wanting something are two very different things. Not earnestly giving it a go, not trying. Commitment, being committed. So all of these things are why we would start at that base kind of rate. $500 a month, 3-month minimum, $1,500 total commitment. Okay, so that gives you kind of like the starting point. If you're not at that point right now, my suggestion, without knowing anything about you, Brian, would be to begin right there. Start charging that amount and see what it drives up for you. If it's nothing, then don't worry about it. But boom, there's your start. Now, let's go a little more deeper into some of your questions. So at that rate, you'll probably get a bunch of no's. Anyhow, you'll just naturally get no's, and that can be confronting because it forces us to like really go deep and ask questions like, am I any good at this? Do I really matter? Does anyone care? And part of the building your confidence is getting confronted with no's. Like part of how you become masterful as a coach is you get almost not immune, because I still it's important for us to feel like, that sucks. I really wanted to support that person. But like to be okay with receiving a no. That's part of our job, is because we just present choice to the client and then let them choose. So if we are trying to avoid letting our clients say no, if we're trying to figure out or craft ways or solutions or proposals so the client never really has to say no, we're taking away their choice. So it's important to get no, and that is actually part of the practice of building your skills as a coach. Rates, I think, should be a stretch for the client. So if you make a proposal and the client just says, yes, I'm in, no worries, at least for me, that's a flag. That's a bit of a trigger. Like, that didn't even cause this person to stall. They didn't even have to think about it. They were just right in. And the two questions that raises for me is, one, is this person really aware of the commitment that this will require? For some people, they like their relationship with money or just with commitment in general is, let's dive in head first, and then we can always quit later on, which is not really a very empowered commitment. The other is where it's just like, yeah, sure, fuck it. I can afford to lose $500 a month. And on both of those two ends, I've talked about this before, the opposite is the same. So in both of those, there's not really the commitment that we as coaches know serve someone in their life, serve someone to really take in coaching and in their lives. I believe, and my stand as a coach, is that for someone to say yes to hiring me should require a bit of a breakthrough for them. So even just the act of saying, yeah, I'm in, is going to create a shift in their world. They're already going to enter the coaching relationship showing up differently. And I'm sure most of you watching this video now or later have read The Prosperous Coach, and Rich talks about exactly this. There's an example of Steve Chandler talking about, Rich made this bold proposal and Steve Chandler kind of brushed him off and said no. And Steve was standing for Rich to create the breakthrough, whether or not Rich knew it, whether or not Steve knew it either, although both, I'm sure Steve was aware of it. And so he knew that for Rich to say yes to him, it was going to require Rich to show up differently. It was going to demand a different way of being from Rich just to be a yes to get in there. That's how I want to stand for my clients. And so I want my rates to demand that level of thought and, frankly, like conflict within the client. And then I want to support them with it. So I want to tell them, look, this is what it's going to cost to work with me: $30,000, $50,000, $100,000, $10,000, $5,000, whatever. And then I want to check in with them and say, like, hey, how's that land? Now that you've heard that, tell me what's going on. And what I'm kind of listening for is I want them to be in the middle of two places. I want them to feel a little bit like they have to pee, but I don't want them to pee. I'm talking literally about urine. So I want that fear, that like, oh my God, kind of feeling like, oh, my bowels just loosened a bit, but I don't want anything to come out because that's too confronting. If I go to someone who's working at Starbucks and tell them it's going to be $100,000 to work with me, I've crossed the pee threshold. So at that point, that's just too much of a jump. And you don't have to follow along with this, but I just don't hold that that's really serving the client when I'm sort of standing on the other side of the Grand Canyon and say, leap, come on, leap into your life. And they're like, dude, I get it. I can't even jump across this puddle. It's like, I get that I'm up to leap, but you're making me pee, Adam. On that note, let me just have a little sip of tea here. Oh, that's good tea. It's chocolate and mint tea today. Forget about it. Jeff, I can't believe you said you want to loosen people's bowels. Come on, isn't that why we got into this work? Okay, so I don't want them to get to the point where they have to pee, but I do want to get them to the point where there's a little bit of that fear. And then I want them, but the other side is I don't want them to just be fearless without any concern. Oh yeah, whatever, that's no money at all. That's easy, because then there's no skin in the game. So that's where I'm kind of trying to personally set my rates when I make a proposal to someone. I'm feeling them out. I'm getting a sense of where they're at in their life. How big is the vision that they want to bring into the world? How much commitment is that going to require from them? And how committed are they to that vision? And then I try to make a proposal that, to me, feels like a fit with that kind of lands with it. That's a bit of an art. There's, you kind of will develop this skill as you become more practiced in the art of coaching. And so I really want to take away any pressure that you should know this already or that you should have a feeling for this. It's more, if you want advice, and I caveat this by saying advice is worth exactly what you paid for it. So here's some $0 advice. That's Canadian dollars too. Just trust that you will reach this point, this ability. If you're willing to stay the course, you'll learn over time, and with support, allowing yourself to be coached as well, you'll learn to get kind of a feel for where someone's at and what's going to be a challenge for them. And then here's the other part of it. Enrollment, which is what we're talking about, enrollment and then the registration at the end where they say yes, is ultimately a conversation. So there's not a one right fee, and there's not like, this is what it costs, the end. I mean, you can hold it that way. You can stand in that space if that's powerful for you. But what I think we miss out on then is the fact that there's like co-creation that happens. So I usually, at least for myself these days, I start with a clear, here's what it typically costs to work with me. Here's what I'm proposing to you. I want to check into the client and see where they're at. And what do they do with that? So some people hem-haw and they're like, I really want it. Can I have a conversation? I'm scared, or I need to talk to my partner. I'll support them with that. Some people, I can tell like, oh, wow, I hit the mark too high, or I hit the mark too low. And so in those situations, I want to, people don't like it when it's the lower one. They like it when I hit the mark too low. But in both these situations, I want to kind of dance with them, and I want to flow. And to Steve Chandler's point, I want to be like a martial artist. I want to accept and receive the no, and I want to challenge the yes. I want to lean into that. And so this is the dance part of it. Is we make a proposal, we check with the client, we see how it lands, we feel them out, and then we kind of be open to co-creating with them in the moment. So I guess that the TLDR of your question, Brian, is that all of this is how I find the balance. And I think the absolute best place to start as a coach is to have some baseline that you're like, okay, this is the place. I think it's really beautiful that we get to dance and we get to improvise in the moment with our clients. And I also think that that is an intermediate skill. If you're a beginner, if you're starting out, set some firm fee and then be really clear. This is what it costs to work with me. You can set your own number, but let's stick with the one I gave. It costs $1,500 to work with me for 3 months. We can do more if you want, but it's a minimum commitment of $1,500. And if they say that's too much, you can say, great, I can support you if you want to see how to make that happen. But I want to be clear, like I'm supporting you to make that commitment. I'm not supporting you to bargain with me or to barter or to lower my rate. And what that'll do is it'll require you to do it. You'll become practiced in a couple things: standing for your value, standing for your client's commitment, and creating a sustainable coaching practice that you can survive on, that you can live off of, and that will serve you going forward. If you do those things, and if you start at that place, I promise you that the arc upwards will go much faster. It'll be slower than you want it to be, and it'll happen much faster than you think it will. Let me just drink one more sip of tea and see if there's anything else I want to share before I shut that down. I want to share that every time I raise my rates, and you don't have to. You don't need, it's not a requirement as a coach. You don't have to raise your rates. I do so because it challenges me. I'm a little bit like our friend John Morgan, who posts here sometimes. I like to lean into that edge. When I start to get comfortable about what I'm charging, or hey, Darren, more tea. Everyone wants more tea. I'm here for the tea. The coaching stuff is done. Every time I start to get comfortable with what I'm charging, I find that my enrollment conversations become easier, but also less inspiring for me. And usually that's the point where I'm starting to stagnate. And so it doesn't have to be your approach, but my approach is great. I'm ready to raise my rates. The baseline I would use was anytime I got hired 3 times without anyone having objections, I had to raise my rates. That was the game I played. So early on, I would propose and I'd say it's going to cost $500 a month. And people are like, oh my God, that's so much money. Which, if you really think about it, $1,500 a year devoted just to developing yourself is peanuts. I remember when I first was doing this work and I was sharing with my friend, and he was like, oh, got it. So you provide a luxury service, which at the time I struggled with, because I was like, part of me thought, yeah, I kind of do. And the other part was like, fuck you. Whereas now I look back and I'm like, $1,500 a month on yourself as a luxury service? That's insane. That's like so little money. That's nothing. Anyhow, so because I related to it that way, I related to it as a lot of money, I got a lot of objections. And then over time, I got better at enrolling and pulling out a vision from people that was worth $1,500, which isn't a particularly big vision. And they would start to just say, yeah, okay, I'm in, let's do it. And I reached this point where I was like, it's time. I've got to up level. So I think that's a great way you can create games like that for yourself. That's a great way to create a balance. I just want to remove myself from any sort of pedestal and say, I experience my own need to pee. Every time I raise my rates, it becomes a new scary watermark for me, and I get frightened about leaning into it, and I get awkward and uncomfortable and stilted in my enrollment conversation, and that's how I know I'm practicing. And it doesn't feel great. I have to practice trust myself and be like, Adam, trust that if you're willing to get supported, work with your coach around this, and continue to stay the course, you will become masterful at this level, and then you get to go to the next level and be confronted there. So that's kind of the game. Thanks to everyone tuning in to watch me drink tea and talk about this stuff. I think this is just an amazing topic of conversation. So I really acknowledge you, Brian, for putting it out there, both here and in Coaches Light the Grid. And any follow-up questions, please ask them in the comments, because I just think coaching is such a noble practice. What we provide people is so valuable, and we need to make money from it. Otherwise, it ceases to be sustainable for us, and then our magic dies inside of us. So I'm really grateful that you're asking questions like this. Thanks, guys. Take care. Talk soon.